Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the next installment of Connecting Conversations. It's so lovely to be with you on this Tuesday evening in Bundaberg. And I don't know where you are watching from or at what time you're watching this, but if you're watching live, it would be lovely to see some comments pop up in the column and let us know where you're watching from. Interact with us, ask some questions. That's what Connecting Conversations is all about. Tonight, as we begin our Connecting Conversations, I'll be speaking to somebody very dear and special, my younger brother, Alan. I call him my big little brother because he's at least a head taller than I am. But it's lovely to have Alan with us. Welcome, Alan. Welcome to Connecting Conversations.
Thanks very much, Stuart. It's great to be able to share in this way with you.
Excellent. All good with the sound and everything else?
Yeah, everything's working. I've even worn my shirt for the occasion. Part of the beauty of doing a call like this is that you don't need to wear any pants. I'm just kidding. I've got pants on. I hope you do too.
Thank the Lord for small mercies. Oh, that's what I say. But for those of you who didn't see the sermon a couple of weeks ago, Alan is he and I together caught this big fish. There's no reason for me showing you this photo other than just to brag and to say that Alan has since grown his beard, and we tease him a little bit about looking like Carlos from Desperate Housewives. Those of you who remember that show. And so, Carlos, it's good to be able to interview you this evening and to be able to talk a little bit about the sermon. Alan, share a little bit. There are people in Bundaberg who know you well, people who know everywhere, know you from South Africa who are watching. But for those who don't know you, share a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your family, your work, your interests, life in South Africa during the very heavy lockdown. Maybe a little bit of Alan works. He's the computer guy in a pharmacy company. How's the pharmacy industry going at this time?
Great, yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, it's certainly interesting times. Perhaps if I start off with just a little bit about me. So, as most of you, I'm sure know, I'm one of four boys. I always tease my brothers that when my parents reached perfection, they stopped. So that is why I'm the youngest. I've got two boys of my own. I'm married to Shannon, and I've got Joel and Noah, my own two sons who some of you might have met too. As you had mentioned, I am the IT manager and the business relationship manager at Aspen Pharmaceuticals. We do have a very big plant in Melbourne, in fact, where I've been to on two occasions. So it certainly is interesting just being in the industry where so many other industries are really feeling the effects of the lockdown, and that we've got an increased demand for our product. But to the point where in Australia, or rather in Italy, our product was nationalized. In Australia, we've been told what products we have to produce at our factory. So it's certainly interesting times that we are living in. But I think I've adjusted to the working from home scenario quite nicely. We're on day 62 now, I think it is,
Wow.
of working from home, and I must say I'm quite enjoying the short featured thing.
Excellent. Thanks, Al. Thanks for sharing that a little bit about what's going on there and life in South Africa at the moment. And I will just say that there's no truth in the rumor that while Alan works at a pharmaceutical company, he gets free drugs. So please don't contact him. He's I've tried. He doesn't help. Friends, just to say also, Alan's given us a little bit of the details of his work and of his family life. Maybe, Alan, can you share with us something of just something of your faith journey before we get into the whole topic of the soul and the sermon? Tell us a little bit about your own experience of Christ and perhaps your own work in the church.
Sure. So, I mean, as I think is customary for most children of ministers. I've grown up in the church, and church has always been a key part of my life. When I was 9 years old, I made a commitment to follow Christ, and I've always been involved in some shape or form in the church. Whether it's teaching Sunday school. I've played in the worship team in the churches that I've been in before, and I'm currently leading worship at our church. And I've served as a society steward or as a leader in the church for about the past 20 years. So, seeing it really as part of my service, part of my calling, though not in the full-time ministry, certainly called to be Christ's witness in the workplace where I'll encounter people that probably won't ever encounter a church except for a funeral or perhaps a wedding. So that's certainly an area that I really enjoy is being able to share my testimony and my walk with Christ with those with whom I work, and then obviously, just as I said, play an active role within our own local church.
Alan, we've served together. Alan was a society steward for some of my years when I ministered in Musgrave. A society steward, for those who are unfamiliar with the term, would be the equivalent of an elder in the Uniting Church. You've done a lot of work in the church in terms of worship leading and being in leadership. What aspect of your service really resonates deep in your soul? What makes you feel most connected to God in terms of the service that you've done?
Stuart, I'd have to say that it would be my involvement in the worship team and in leading the music ministry, within the church. I think any musician will tell you that there's a very deep connection, and for me, it's a soul connection. In fact, when one is playing instruments, playing worship to God. So I would certainly say that it's the worship through music that really resonates deep within my soul. That, and I think also just my love for nature, for the beach, for the mountains, combine beach, mountains, and music, and you've got the perfect combination. So that's where I feel contentment within my own soul.
Thanks. Friends, please keep the comments coming. If you have some questions, I can't promise that we'd get to all of the questions, but we'd love to just interact with you in this connecting conversation. And so pop something in the comments there. I've tried to show as many as I can of the hellos that have been put up there. So thank you for that. It's great to have you watching with us. Al, on Sunday, we started a new sermon series called Soul Keeping, caring for the most important part of you. And just to give acknowledgement where it's due, the series is based on a book called Soul Keeping by John Ortberg. And there's quite a lot of material that I've used also from the works of Dallas Willard and Eugene Peterson. So as folks hear the sermon series, just to give credit where it's due, that has formed I'm very grateful to those writers for the ministry they have in terms of expounding teaching. In this first part of the series, we looked at the concept of the soul itself. We looked at the nature of the soul. We looked at the health of the soul. And I mentioned that as humanity, we know the importance of souls, save our souls and all the rest of it. We know the significance, even if we don't always know how to define it. You and I know this importance. We've always been very close. I think I've had a soul connection right from the very beginning. Also, you don't know that I'm going to do this, but just to show you, there's a picture, a picture of us as little kids. I'm the cute one on the right. Alan's the one looking a bit, not knowing what's going on. But even from this very early age, we've been connected, growing up together as kind of best friends all the way through. And in fact, we even named our boat Soulmates. And I don't know, that's not the greatest picture of it there, but if I show you there. And although we never actually caught any soul on the boat, but we share a bond and connection, I think that resonates in our souls. Souls are so important to us. I asked a question at the beginning of the series. I said, how would you explain a soul to someone who has never heard that word before? A lot of people got on to me and said, you never gave us the answer. So I said, I'm going to get Alan to give you the answer.
Well, at least we know they'll be getting the right answer.
Al, what is your initial response to that question?
Sid, I think for me, if you ask me to explain a soul, it really would be what connects us to God. You know, we are created in God's image, and to me that means that the soul is the Spirit of Christ, you know, that is within us. I believe that the soul transcends this physical life that we have, and is what goes with us, or what is us in eternity. I think it's the deepest thing about you, and it's a part of us that I believe God would communicate with. So for me, it's that direct connection to God through His Spirit within us, and it's just wonderful that it's what transcends this realm and takes us into the kingdom of heaven.
So that it's a connection with God. Okay. Here's a video. You guys didn't get to see this, but I'd like to show briefly the video that I couldn't show on Sunday. Now I'm going to disappear and Alan's going to disappear, but we can both still talk. Here's the video of John Ortberg.
Your soul is the deepest thing about you.
Your soul
It is the
deepest
eeriest,
thing
most
about
mysterious,
you.
most
It
evocative,
is the
crucial,
eeriest, most
sacred,
mysterious,
eternal,
most evocative, crucial,
life-directing.
sacred, eternal, life-directing, fragile but indestructible, and nowadays quite controversial part of your existence. Jesus himself said that the soul is worth more than the world. So why in the world would you not value it above all else? Wouldn't it be a good thing to know what it is and how to take care of it? Wouldn't it be worth knowing how to honor it, nurture it? Two things are certain. One, you have a soul. And the other, it's the only one you will ever have. In soul keeping, we're going to go into the depths of understanding what the soul is and why changing your habits could change your life.
So that was the John Ortberg video that we couldn't see. Ironically, I could have used a computer specialist at that particular time in the morning. But John says that your soul is the deepest thing about you, and it's the only one that you have. But despite that, because it's out of sight, as it were, we tend not always to look after it. We tend to forget about it. We tend to shelve it. And the consequences are a bit like the keeper of the stream in the story that I told. How do you think we can keep our soul in sight, as it were? How do you keep your soul in sight?
Sid, I think, as I mentioned in the previous in our previous point, if the soul is Christ within us, as the Holy Spirit within us, I think it's being aware of my soul in my life and of God in my life. I think one has to keep nurturing it, and certainly not neglecting it, but acknowledging God within our lives each day, and certainly not taking any day for granted. We need to live by Christ's power, and Christ has given us His Holy Spirit in our soul. I think obviously the important things like prayer time and spending time in God's Word would apply. But I think at the very core of it, it's about being present and acknowledging Christ in our life. And I think that's how I'm able to keep my soul in sight and not neglect it.
Can you elaborate a little bit more when you say being present? How do you mean being present in the moment, or?
Well, yeah, I think it's so easy for us to get wrapped up in the future, in the past, but I think for me specifically, I find it very easy to live looking forward to things in the future, and I think one almost sidelines the soul in those circumstances. I think being present in soul, body, and mind in the present moment is certainly helpful to remind you of the soul within your life and the part that plays, as opposed to always longing for something in the future, some future state, which may or may not happen.
Okay, thanks for that. I also spoke about the soul as the deepest, most important, the most sacred part of ourselves. A little bit like what you were saying in your definition in the beginning. It's the part of us that desires connection, not only with God, but connection also with other people. Like I said, soulmates and so on. It's internal and it's external, which again goes with what you're saying about being present in the moment. Whatever's happening, you are there. You're present. You're taking in the sense of soul with you. Dallas Willard says that the soul actually integrates everything. And he likened that to a computer system, which I thought would be an interesting question to ask you as a computer specialist. How does that explanation work for you? How does it fit with your thoughts on the soul?
It worked. It's kind of good and bad. Bad in that perhaps I know that a computer can still break catastrophically, and I've been a part of that. I've been a part of those breakages. So where Dallas Willard was saying how it keeps everything alive, and that yes, but your processor and mainboard don't necessarily keep it alive. But it was helpful in the sense that your processor and mainboard or brains of the computer really do keep everything in sync. And if things get out of sync, it goes chaotically wrong. So without a healthy mainboard and processor to keep everything in check, it really is a kind of stormy water that you're heading into. So it worked well from that perspective.
Okay, I like that. In sync is a nice way to put it in different terms to what Dallas was saying, and when he was saying it integrates body, mind, will, and spirit. All of that integrated, or rather, to use your words, in sync with the will of God, which the unhealthy soul doesn't experience. The unhealthy soul experiences the disintegration. Exactly. And the disconnection. As I say, souls can also go spectacularly wrong. And I think, let me not speak for everybody else, but I can certainly say that I know the feeling of the experience of disintegration, where your soul is not in tune with the will of God, where you're not in sync with God's will. I used the example in the service about dieting. Your head says don't eat it, but your mouth is already chomping it down. But we know that experience. But can you maybe share with us an experience of integration from your life? Has there been a time that's really stood out for you as a moment where you knew that things were in sync with God?
I think there's two instances which which really stand out for me, Stuart. Firstly, I mentioned earlier, I was at the age of 9 when I gave my life to Christ, and that was at a presentation done by Professor David Block, who's a world famous professor in astronomy and in applied physics. And I mean, this was way back, many years ago. But he had 3 big screens in the church. He was showing images of space and basically using science to prove the existence of God. And that for me was certainly one moment when I felt that integration between what I was hearing, what I was feeling, what I was seeing. So that would certainly be one example. And then another example, I think, sure.
So was that like an integration, not just in terms of your own soul, but like an integration of the whole kind of cosmos, the whole.
Exactly. Everything just came together, and I think it's exceptionally hard to describe that experience. But it was at that moment that I knew, or perhaps you can say that my soul was really connecting with Christ. So yeah, that it is a complete integration, if I use your words.
Sorry, carry on. I interrupted you.
I was just going to say that there was one other opportunity for that. I must have been early 20s, and I was sitting in Dad's church. I think most of the folk know that our father's also a minister, and he was preaching. And I can remember I drifted off in the sermon, as one does sometimes. And, I was thinking to myself, how can God care about little old me? There's billions of people in this world. Our world is just one small planet in many, many galaxies. How can He care about me? And as I kind of came to and started concentrating again, Dad looked straight at me. Now, I can't remember his words. I think he said something like, "And you might be thinking that God doesn't care about you because you're just one small person and insignificant." He said, "Well, let me tell you something." He goes, "He does," and he points at me. And I thought, well, that's certainly God, God speaking to me. And it was at that moment that one can feel the integration once again between soul, heart, body, mind, and just an experience of that soul connecting directly with God.
Awesome. I know Dad's watching. I would just like to say, Dad, I have never drifted off in any of your sermons.
I learned it from you, Stu.
Some of your sons listened to every word. Ian was saying a kind of Control Alt and Delete is a restoration for the soul, which is a nice way of looking at it. And this brings me to the parable of the sower. Earlier on, Shane commented and said, I love in the parable of the sower, there's a positive and hopeful aspect found in discussing the first 3 who had an imperfect reception of the word. And for me too, Shane, it was great to kind of pick up on the positive aspect in the parable of the sower, which is often in the first section just seen as so negative. But Jesus uses this parable out to talk of, you could take it in many ways, but I took it to mean the condition of the soul on Sunday. And I said that the hardened soul is one that's been hurt, has formed this protective shell of bitterness or cynicism and suspicion. Can it be softened it can be softened with the smallest amount of sacrifice. Can you share a story with us of a hardened soul that you've seen soften?
Yes, Stuart, I was thinking about this, and obviously without wanting to go into specifics around names or places, anything like that, I've certainly experienced that kind of person with a hardened soul. And what one finds is that there's certainly an emphasis in the world on stuff, on having possessions, on having status. There's pride, and everything around us is geared to feeding that. And I think that in itself serves to harden one's soul and to make one less receptive to that communion with Christ. But what I've seen, and I'm thinking of three people in particular, and what I've seen in all three of those, those hardened souls, was that love always kind of overcame that. And at times that when they've experienced that love through other people, their guards dropped, even if it's just temporarily, but they've dropped their guard, and you can see there's a soul that is craving Christ's love. There's a soul that is craving the love of others, no matter what they may project, kind of 23 out of 24 hours a day. There's still that softening of the soul that can happen. As you mentioned in the story, over the weekend, the souls are still receptive to receiving that love, and I think it's only through that love that those souls will eventually soften. And one can't give up hope. One has to keep loving, in order for those souls to actually soften.
Yeah. The deep soul, I can't believe how fast half an hour goes in these things, but the deep soul, there been an experience in your life where you've been touched by somebody who has a depth of soul that has stood out for you?
I think so, Stuart. There's a person that stands out for me. I knew her my late teenage years, early 20s. A very old lady, dear lady in our church at that time. Her name was Daphne. I call her Granny Daff. She would come in every Monday morning. She would clean the church. She was really an amazing person. And I got the impression that she was always feeding her soul. She stayed in a small flat in the center of town, and she had about 10 homeless people that she would give them each some coins, and she'd give them each soap, and they would sleep on her veranda on the porch every night, and she would give them that kind of refuge. And she really was a person who looked after her own soul, but who also loved and nurtured the souls of others.
Oh, yeah. Remember, Daphne, she's a beautiful depth of soul is absolutely true. One other positive out of that parable, just very briefly, I said there are two constants, that it's not the parable of the good and the bad seeds, and it's not the parable of the good and the bad sower. What does it mean for you that the sower is always sowing generously and that the seeds are always good seeds?
See, I think briefly it means that God is never turning his back on us, and that we should never write off anyone else. God can always soften their soul. That the grace of God, no matter how hard a person's soul is, can always penetrate. So it speaks to me of God's generosity and of God's love and of God's grace. Awesome.
Friends, that is just about our time for this evening. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the fact that you've connected with us. Alan, thank you for taking the time to be with us and to share with us this evening. We really appreciate it. And we just pray God's blessing upon you and the family and the rest of South Africa as they navigate the lockdown. And maybe I can end with a quote. I love the way you used the word in sync. And the quote I thought I'd end off with tonight is, our souls are the very part of us that syncs all of life together, the part that connects all of who we are with God and with each other. May you know the beauty of that connection deep within your soul. Bless you, Carlos. Have a good one. And
thanks very much. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been great to spend this time with you. I just hope none of my colleagues saw, because I have to put in for leave.
Because you're supposed to be at work. Well,
exactly. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed the time.
Thanks a lot, Al.
Cheers.
Likewise. Friends, that is our connecting conversations for this evening. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I pray that as we head off, you would know the beauty of that connection in your soul. God bless.